think about the video,
I don't
man?
know.
I mean, I've been thinking about it.
I'm thinking like kind of hip hop.
I don't know, man. Club.
When it's over for Stephon Diggs and the Buffalo Bills. Tim Graham is one of my favorite sports journalists. He writes for The Athletic. He's written for the Buffalo News, ESPN.com. If you subscribe to The Athletic, and you should, you can go back and read his article and interview with OJ. It was it was just a great read, and I think you'll really like it. Tim, how are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you for remembering me as being connected to OJ. which is what I would expect, actually. You know, when I landed the first interview with OJ for the Buffalo News, and I think it was the first interview he'd done in 15 years, and it was absolutely the first interview he did after being released from prison, I knew that it was probably one of those things that I will be remembered for. So it's the bet I made.
Well, I didn't think it was bad. I when I read it, I thought it was really well done because you walked away.
I don't think it was bad. I don't think it was bad either. I mean, I'll defend it. The decision. It was incredibly newsworthy, but yeah. OJ is just has his own gravitational pull that it was a whole thing. You know, I had to defend it, and I had to rationalize it, and the second time I wrote about OJ, I did not look at the comments once. I posted the story, and then you guys have at it. It was kind of my attitude.
Well, but here's the thing. Anytime that guy shows up in Buffalo, Tim, it's like there's a parade for him. People are cheering and hugging him and taking pictures with him. And even in the article, if I recall, he said to you, I think a lot of people would love to have my life.
That was the one in The Athletic. That's right. We did it over. By the way, I'm derailed already, but I love this conversation. But we sat down at breakfast, and he'd been out the night before because it was the day or it was the weekend of his 70th birthday. So he had a party. Okay. And I'm interviewing him, and he's not hungover or anything, but I think he'd had a few drinks the night before. So he decides that at breakfast, he's going to have a Bloody Mary. And I'm thinking to myself, I couldn't have keyed this up any better. And then, so I think the lead to my story was something like, you know, he was well into his second or third Bloody Mary when he started contemplating, how he'll be remembered. And it went from there.
Yeah, it's got to be almost surreal to watch people around. Like I've always said, I'm very torn about OJ because I am guilty of playing a lot of his.
Watch your words there.
But his tweets, when he goes out and he goes, "Hello, Twitter world," I'll play that because I do find, first of all, when he's talking football stuff, it's very knowledgeable. That is, you can't dispute that.
He does. He knows his football.
He does.
And I've had conversations with him, and I've also been in conversations where I've maybe not been a participant in the conversation, but I'm listening. And it's not just what he's seeing. He'll say something, and then a week later or 2 weeks later, you're watching the games, and sure enough, it's happening.
Yeah.
He's not just because he played in the double bar face mask era. A lot of guys lose touch. For some reason, he sees the game. Now, that's not to say that you want to start a podcast with him.
No,
but,
I don't.
But you're right. He's or me, for that matter, which I may or may not have been offered the opportunity.
Wait, whoa! You were offered an opportunity to do an OJ podcast?
I was.
That's amazing.
A few years ago.
Yeah,
I've never publicly said that, but it is true.
Well, he must have felt very comfortable with you.
Well, he did, and that's it's an interesting thing because it's complicated. But as a journalist, I take that as an honor, not O.J. Simpson or anyone, whether it would be the president of the United States. But after the first interview, which is how I got the second interview, and I think I've probably interviewed him 6 or 7 times since then, is that he felt that I treated him fairly and that I earned his trust. And so, not for whatever that means, but that's my job as a journalist, is to be a listener and to be a conduit and to be able to fairly portray things. And I never pulled punches. I mean, I wrote about what he was accused of, the brutality of it. I've interviewed other people who've said, this guy definitely did it. And how could you, slit your wife's throat? And, I don't ignore anything. And then to have him, a few days later, maybe through his manager, I hear, OJ thought you treated him pretty fairly. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I always got the same impression. I thought it was very, just matter of, these are the facts, right? These are the facts of what we know. And that was that.
And it's newsworthy whenever somebody with that type of complicated legacy, whether you love him or hate him, and probably more people hate him than love him, but it's still fascinating and I think worthwhile to find out what people like this think.
Yes.
You don't have to. I'm not promoting it. I'm not saying or advocating, but it's like, hey, this is what one of the more diabolical, most infamous people on the planet thinks, and maybe we can learn something about the human condition and shake our heads or roll our eyes or whatever you think. But, anyways, I had no idea we were going to talk about OJ, I can talk about him for the whole segment with you.
No, you know what else? Like Tim is also, I'm pretty sure you covered boxing for a number of years. Are you in the Boxing Writers Association or something? You were.
I used to be the president.
President. So did you ever sit with Tyson? Because I had an interview with Tyson, who would be also somebody that people may refer to as diabolical. And I'm just curious if you ever talked. I loved talking to Tyson.
I've spoken to him many times, but I have not had and Muhammad Ali also.
Wow.
Even I've been I've had an audience with Muhammad Ali a couple of times. At the time you didn't necessarily have a conversation with him, although there was give and take. But with Tyson and Ali both, always other people around. Too many other people around for me to say I interviewed him or we had a meaningful connection.
I got you.
Like I have had with the other guys of that post prison era, like De La Hoya and Lennox Lewis and those guys.
Yeah. Very interesting. All right. So the real reason that I bothered you today was this trade that was announced where the Bills agreed to send Stephon Diggs to the Texans for a 2025 second-round pick, while also sending a 2025 fifth-round pick to the Texans and a 2024 sixth-round pick. Now, from a roster standpoint, it leaves the Bills pretty thin at wide receiver, to say the least. Diggs was I think you could call him their rock at number one for the last 4 seasons. And from a cap perspective, I think it tacks on an additional $4 million onto the $28 million salary cap already. So the question, I keep scratching my head, and other people, we had a attorney in here for the last segment who said, I don't understand why now. Why now trade Diggs?
Well, I think it was because the Houston Texans were making an offer that the Bills thought they could not replicate at the end of another season. And, second-round pick, even though it is a 2025 second-round pick, which dilutes the value of it, of course, a 2020 or a second-round pick in 2024 here in 3 weeks or whenever the draft is, has way more value because of the immediacy of it, the things you can do with it. It's a player. It's a player who will be on your roster this year. You don't have to wait, 16 months before you see this guy play a game. So there's that part of it. There was a timing thing, and the Bills, they're seeing a player in decline. This is a declining asset from a purely business standpoint. I know it's difficult or maybe you're not supposed to talk about human beings necessarily, as lines on a spreadsheet, but maybe in sports more than anything else, you can actually do it because, open any stat packet or a website like Pro Football Reference, and they all are exactly that. You can take a look at it. But even with your naked eye, as a Bills fan, second half of last season, he was just not quite invisible, but clearly not the player that he had been at the beginning of the season. He was a mushroom cloud when the season began. He was all galaxy.
He was.
And then about halfway through the season, the production just dropped off, and the Bills said he wasn't hurt. He never appeared on the injury report. he was playing sometimes less snaps in a game than Trent Sherfield, but the Bills were winning. They won without him. They went 6-1 down the home stretch. And so I think they saw, like I said, a declining asset that they can win in spite of. And so why not move from him? And really, it's a combo, though, Bill. It's not just the declining asset part. It is all the little microaggressions that happen with Stephon Diggs, the tweets from not only him but his brother that take shots at Buffalo, that take shots at Josh Allen, the sideline blowups that happen on occasion, and you're willing to put up with that when Stephon Diggs is an All-Pro caliber player. But when he is catching 3 passes for 38 yards or dropping a pinpoint bomb from 55 yards away when it matters the most, I think the Bills can get to a point where, you know what, that second-round pick sounds pretty good. Let's just go ahead and take it and move on. We're going to eat this $31 million cap hit, which I think really illustrates how willing they were to move on from Stephon Diggs. I think that they were just tired of the act, and they were tired of just the little things, the drama, and as a fan, you can look past it, you can rationalize it, but you also get to unplug from it from usually 6 days a week and tune in the game and watch Stephon Diggs perform. But throughout the course of the week, and especially during the off seasons, we still don't know what the big blow up was last year between and the organization, in which Sean McDermott said he was very concerned that Stephon Diggs wasn't there for the first day of mandatory minicamp, or I should say not on the field anyway. There are a lot of things that we still just don't know the answers to. And I think the Bills were just tired of trying to come up with excuses and come up with reasons that this is just a guy being competitive and wants to win so badly. And I think, and here's another thing. I'm rambling now because, hell, it's all fresh in my mind. But during the season, or heading into the regular season finale against the Dolphins, I interviewed Devin McCourty, who's an analyst for NBC Sports. The game is going to be on NBC Sports. Devin McCourty's the former safety of the New England Patriots, won 3 Super Bowls, and great player.
Good guy.
There's another guy in here who's a fan of the Patriots, just to let you know.
But yeah, fantastic player. And he said, and the point was, he said he thinks after watching the film, and this is an educated guy who breaks down receiver play for his career, and played against. He game planned specifically against Stephon Diggs a number of times while playing for the New England Patriots. He was watching the film of the Bills in the second half of the season and said, and I quoted him, he said it on the record, "This looks like a team with a serious issue in which they're trying to," and I'm paraphrasing, but said, they look like they're trying to prove that they can win without it. The Bills were actively telling Stephon Diggs during the season last year, go ahead and be Stephon Diggs. You be you, but we're going to do things differently, and we don't need you. And sure enough, they went 6-1 or 7-2 if you want to include the playoffs. And you could say, yeah, but boy, 7-2 in the playoffs, they didn't win that Super Bowl. Well, they sure gave him an opportunity to help out in that game against the Chiefs. And not only do we have that drop at the end, first two snaps of the game were a Stephon Diggs fumble on the first play and a drop on the second play. I think the Bills are just fed up.
Has Diggs or Allen, either one of them, come out on Twitter yet to acknowledge the trade? I know they hadn't as of earlier this afternoon.
I don't believe so. And I just left the facility about 45 minutes ago, and I've been so maybe within the past little bit it's happened. Josh Allen isn't much of a social media guy. Maybe he would take the social media in this instance. But Stephon Diggs, just last night he was tweeting a shot at Josh Allen. A passive aggressive response to a fan who was saying, which I think it's accurate. Josh Allen doesn't need a top tier wide receiver to be a successful quarterback. Meaning it wasn't mandatory or necessary, but Josh Allen can do well. And actually, I think the Bills proved that at the end of last season.
Yeah.
But Stephon Diggs replied to this random fan, "You sure?"
Oh.
And when I saw that, I started writing. Because, so people may wonder, gee, Tim, how did you get your column out so fast after the Bills announced that trade? And it's not to say that it was just that one thing.
Yeah.
But based on what I had been hearing, I thought, this is a guy who knows he's done. You don't take shots at the franchise quarterback unless you know it's over.
God, I have so many questions. I could talk to you forever because I just real quick, we can get to a player's pocket now with social media. And I've always thought that this would be a real problem for some guys who are super competitive and very protective and just take it so personally, right? This is their identity. This is what they've done since they were 6, 7, 8 years old, and they are the best in the world at it. And the guy with the garbage plate stains down his front shirt are going to tell me how to do, you know what I'm saying? I mean,
it's not even the guys. Some of it's the wives of the guys.
Yeah.
They're
right.
Back
you could right.
What's her name? That's married to Verlander.
What he was doing was, I guess he was. I don't think he was obviously Stephon Diggs felt insulted. So, but I think what the guy was trying to do was say, Josh Allen's so good.
Yes.
And he is, because he can run the ball, because he can do all these things. He made Khalil Shakir work as a second-year receiver. He made Dalton Kincaid work as a rookie tight end. He makes things happen. And he clearly did not need Stephon Diggs because they won in spite of him. Well, without him as a superstar talent. And so this fan was
you've changed,
100% accurate.
Yeah, you've changed my perspective on the 2024 season because a lot of things that I'm reading is this has decimated the offense. And I would say that I feel like Stephon Diggs can be given some credit for helping Josh find himself at the NFL level. But Josh has gone on to be able to do all the things that we've seen. And is clearly one of the top 2, if not top 3, if not top 2 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Right. Yeah. It's not like filling out your fantasy lineup and just adding up the stats. There are people who are going to take over, who are going to fill this vacuum. There are players like Shakir who started out the first half of the season playing 20% of the snaps. Now, by the end of the season, he was playing 80. But so you get a full season of Khalil Shakir playing 80% of the snaps, Curtis Samuel joining the team, whatever they do in the draft. Dalton Kincaid is an extra year more experienced. I'm not saying that it's going to be perfectly fine, but I think that a lot of the void will be filled. I mean, the vacuum will just, stuff's going to happen. People are going to get the ball. But it's interesting. It's interesting to think about the team without Stephon Diggs, who, as you mentioned, his greatness cannot be understated for the 4 years that he was great. And I think that even though the Bills have 2 receivers in the Pro Football Hall of Fame, Andre Reed and James Lofton, and you can name other receivers like Eric Moulds and Albert Dubenion, and even Stevie Johnson and Lee Evans. Yeah. I mean, they've had Frank Lewis. I mean, they've had guys with great seasons. You can argue, and I think you'd have a strong case to say that Stephon Diggs is the greatest receiver in Bills history, longevity notwithstanding. The 4 years, but what he did in those 4 years was better than any other Bills receiver has done in his 4 years, in any 4 years. It'd be interesting actually to see, and maybe it's a good piece. If you were to even take any of Andre Reed's 4 best years and stack him up against Stephon Diggs' 4 consecutive years or his entire career, and it might be tough. It might be tough for Andre Reed. Again, I'm doing it off the top of my head, but he's great. And there's not going to be a wall. The Wall of Fame will not exist in the new stadium. They're going to remove it. They're going to have something out in a plaza.
Thanks, OJ.
But you know what? And we've come full circle. You're exactly right. It is a way to not have OJ in the stadium.
I blame Kent Hall.
It's exactly right. But whatever they do that replaces this Wall of Fame, Stephon Diggs will be in it someday. And he helped the Bills go from perennial laughing stock to perennial Super Bowl contender.
Absolutely, and I think he really did help Josh. I would say find your voice is something that's often said. I don't think it's the same thing, but find your, I don't know, your arm, your style in the NFL and what's going to work. And boy, with a guy with that strong an arm and everybody saying accuracy problems when he came into the NFL, and once Stephon joined the team, that seemed to all go away, or at least that talk seemed to be less and less.
Yeah, I did a piece. I wish I had it in front of me. I could probably rattle off some better stats for you. But during Stephon Diggs's dip at the end of last season, not only was he producing less, he was being thrown to he wasn't running deep routes anymore. Everything was close to the line of scrimmage, so they could try to get him more involved more quickly. I don't know if that was because, like you say, he wasn't injured. And with the way that the NFL legislates its injury reports now due to gambling concerns, the Bills wouldn't just not put Stephon Diggs on an injury report like they might have in the past. Because it's nobody's, they might think, well, it's nobody's business. We don't want people to know that he's got a bad hamstring or whatever. But with gambling the way it is, and the punishments that teams are levied through fines and whatever else, they are diligent in putting everything on the injury report these days. He never appeared on the injury report,
No.
so I believe all that he was not hurt. But it seemed like they were dealing with a player who had lost a step almost overnight. He went from, like we said, all world, all galaxy, to just another guy. You can take a look. It's almost exactly halfway through the season. It just went away.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It is. Tim, I really appreciate your time. I don't want to take up any more time, but I'd love to have you back on. If you're ever in Rochester or in the studio, I think it'd be fun.
I would enjoy that very much. I don't get to Rochester a bunch, but over the phone until we get to training camp and whenever, or maybe I'm passing through, I'll give you a heads up.
Yeah, I would love that because there's so many things. Because I'd love to hear about your boxing side of things. I on the exercise, I don't want to overstate what I do, but on the exercise and on the exercise
Here we go,
side,
Greg Connors.
I instruct boxing, and I love it. I love it as a sport, and it hurts sometimes to see where the sport's at these days.
What's your pick?
Well, I don't watch it anymore because of that. But I think that is a topic in and of itself that I can speak on.
Yeah.
But I don't know the guys anymore. And I did a story, and I know you move on to other things too, but years ago, heading into the Mayweather-Pacquiao fight, I did a story for the Buffalo News in which the theme was, this is the last great fight for America. And granted, Pacquiao is not an American fighter, but I was saying this is going to be the last fight that matters to the American audience.
I got to tell you, I remember I sought out a restaurant, and we went down to a private room with a bunch of people. Yeah. And I remember watching that and just thinking.
I think it's held up to be true that it got irrelevant. But I stopped through. I did a tour. I went around the country to some hot spots and talked to people. And I went to Philly. And on my way to Philly, I stopped in Easton to interview Larry Holmes. And we sat in his office, his business office, and we went down the list of the top 15 WBC, which was the title that he held, and at the time was considered the most prominent of the major world heavyweight title belts. Ali had it, and he recognized, I think, 2 of the 15 names. And this is Larry Holmes, let alone Joe Schmo.
Right.
I went to the Rocky statue, and there was a busload of kids from Kentucky on a school field trip. They were 8th and 9th graders. This should be, future sports fans and whatever. And I asked them who the heavyweight champ. They're all posing at the Rocky statue. They knew what the Rocky statue was and that it was famous and that it was iconic. And so I asked them I got them all together with their teacher's permission. I said, okay, everybody, who can tell me who the heavyweight champion was? And one kid was like, I don't know, Floyd Mayweather. And it's like, nope, obviously not. All the teachers, they got the adults. Nobody knew.
Right.
It was, nobody knows anymore. And that's, it's sad.
Champion is.
I don't either. Tyson Fury, I'm guessing.
That's what I was thinking.
It is Fury, but you're right, because there's no names. And I don't know about Buffalo so much, but Rochester had, Carmen Basilio.
Oh, it's great history. Yeah. Great history in Rochester.
Great history. And for a while, Big Baby was training here. And he was supposed to be somebody who was going to go for the title fight. And I don't know whatever happened to that guy.
Hasim Rahman, of course. Steve
Hasim.
Nelson as a manager is great. The banquet that you guys used to put on every year was just fabulous. You'd get, majors, Bernard Hopkins and, whomever, Lennox Lewis. I mean, Hall of Famers would come in, of course, Canastota being close. But anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, I've always been envious of Rochester's boxing history.
Do you have a pick on the Tyson Jake Paul fight?
I can't even.
Jake Paul. I think Jake Paul's going to kick his ass.
Really?
No, he doesn't.
Yes, and no, I do.
What?
I absolutely do.
I'm watching
and I'll tell you why.
Why?
I'll tell you why. It's because I saw Mike Tyson at the in Louisville lose to Corey Sanders. This a long time ago. I saw this. He was shot then. That was. Heck, I'm trying to remember, 15, 20 years ago, probably 15 years ago. I mean, you have to look it up. But when he fought in Louisville, I saw that fight, and this was a guy who was shot. Yeah. And he's a lot older now. He hasn't been training. He presumably was training for that fight, and now he's up against a guy who's younger. I think this is my prediction. We can revisit. I think Mike Tyson I think it's going to be an embarrassing day for Mike Tyson and for boxing.
I hope you're wrong. I've been watching, and I don't know where the clips
I hope I'm wrong, too.
Yeah, I'm
Sarge, but I don't think it's going to happen.
Tyson knock this kid out.
I watched the little clips of Tyson training, and granted, I mean, Tim, they're 2 minutes, maybe less, but it looks fierce. I mean, he's practically.
I've also heard that those are old clips.
Well, they could be. They very well could be. I was just thinking that as you were saying what you were saying, because I thought, and the other thing is they're a clip. Anybody can look great in, giving a quick combo with no real resistance. It's just a guy with the body armor and the mitts. So there's nothing coming at you really.
Like Bill on a Monday.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Well, I had a lot of fun with this. I'm sorry I derailed it twice in the beginning and at the end.
It's been a pleasure. I always enjoy talking to you. So thank you, and love to do it again.
Anytime, Bill.
All right. Thank you, Tim. Tim Graham from The Athletic. Make sure you subscribe to The Athletic, and I'm sure that boy, that's interesting that he picked up on that tweet.
I wanted to ask him, though, with the Ring of Fame being gone, if there's any truth to the rumor that the in-house drunk tank at the new stadium was going to be the O.J. Simpson room.
That could that would be
That's where they're going to put his plaque.
That would be very funny. We're going to take a moment. When we come back, there was somebody we talked about in a previous episode, and we had reached out to this person, and we tried to talk. And today, like just this evening,
just as I sat down here, I got a heart emoji.
Yes,
and then I've been going back and forth.
We will. I got to see if I still have this person's number. But we'll get you caught up on the whole story, and we'll see if we can try to persuade the person to come on with us. But it probably wouldn't be in their best interest to do that. But we'll see if we can do it anyway. We'll get to all that next. But first.